Hello and welcome to the podcast at the card table, in which we discuss creation, practice, performance and history with the greatest minds in Magic. Today's episode is brought to you by MAGICBOX, one of the UK's leading bricks and mortar magic shops, stocking everything from Murphy's, Penguin, Theory 11, Illusionist and so much more. And with their price match guarantee, they'll never be beaten on price. Plus, as listeners of the podcast, you'll receive 10% off your order when you use code PATCT at the checkout. That's PATCT. Check the link in description for more details. Without further ado, let's get on to the episode. As always, this is optimized for YouTube, so if you'd like to check out the annotated ERDNASE section in full, please head over to the YouTube. Otherwise, you are getting 99% of the same episode as usual, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Today's guest is a renowned magician and mentalist, and of course the owner of Wonder & Co., Edinburgh's first and only magic shop. He's also 1/3 of Insane Magic, the sellout Edinburgh Fringe sensation, as well as performing and creating internationally for acclaimed productions like Illusionarium, Magic Immersive and Purple Rabbit. Please welcome the ever incredible Cameron Gibson. How are we doing today, Cam? Are you well?
Good, thanks. Yeah, not bad. It's like weird weather today. It's like hot but also cold.
Yeah, I am absolutely sweltering. But
yeah, it's weird, huh?
We're here, we're loving life, and we're a few days out from spending quite a bit of time together. Obviously, we've got Glastonbury coming up, which is a big thing for you guys, performing at Glastonbury. And big thing on the Saturday. What's happening on the Saturday?
I just took me a minute there. I wasn't prepared for that question. It's the Saturday at Glastonbury. We're doing our 100th show together as Insane Magic, which is pretty crazy. It's been just about 2 years, so 100 shows in 2 years with the other two idiots.
It's an awful lot of shows with Luke and Elliot. It's a lot of time to put up with them. And then obviously after that we've got Durham Fringe, and then bam, straight into Edinburgh Fringe for the entirety of August. So it's a very busy few months. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
I feel like I don't see you for months at a time, and then like this year we're just spending like 2.5 months together.
All together. Yeah, it's absolute. It's the same with the Magic community in general. I feel like I don't really see everyone for the majority of the year, and then Edinburgh Fringe see absolutely everyone, and then the likes of Blackpool, South Tyneside Magic Convention, like you get full weeks at a time seeing people, which is always nice. So
yeah, it's fun.
So let's get straight into it, and we're going to hop all the way back to little baby Cameron, and we're going to figure out what was your origin story, why Magic, and how did you get into it?
Yeah, I think I have a bit of an odd origin story, I guess. I didn't get a Magic set when I was a kid, although, sorry, I did. I loved it. But I didn't really get into Magic. I remember at school there was a kid in my school who got like magic lessons from a real magician, and he had some great tricks, and I was always super jealous of him. But I studied engineering at university. I went to the University of Glasgow to do mechanical engineering. And I saw a magic show there, and I sort of loved it, and I couldn't really let it lie and just enjoy it for what it was. I had to sort of reverse engineer the tricks, and I went off and found magic and started learning it for that reason. And I sort of fell in love with it and realized that I could do weddings and events, make a little bit of money while I was at university. And then when I left university, decided I didn't want to be a boring engineer for the rest of my life. And yeah, went professional straight out of university.
Do you remember who that first magician was that you saw in the magic show that sort of spurred it on?
I do, yeah. I don't think he really does magic anymore. I actually think I know what he does, but it's a magician called Matthew J. Dowden.
Oh, okay.
So he now lives and works in Toronto, actually, which is kind of a weird story. And he's an actor in Hallmark movies. So he mainly does Hallmark movies, which, if you don't know, are the sort of like the Christmas card people produce the cheesiest movies on earth. And he does really, really well, actually. He's quite successful in that. Yeah, he did magic shows, kind of classic magic around one of them in particular, not the one I originally saw, I don't think, but one of them was about the magic of the movies, and he talked about all these characters in movies. And I specifically remember him doing multiplying bottles as well, and that was the trick that I really went, that's like, I had no idea how it was done. Yeah.
Wow, what a full circle thing, doing a show about movies and all the staple stars, and then going into that. Me and Graham Shaw were talking about. I think
he was always interested in like acting on the side, and he was I think he sort of sang a bit as well, and but as far as I'm aware, he's really successful over there, and I'm sure he probably still does a bit of magic as well.
Fair play. When did your journey move away from sort of general magic more so into the mentalism side of things? Obviously, you do a lot of mentalism, you do a lot of hypnosis. Obviously, you do the Insane Show, which is a little bit of everything. When did it sort of steer away from the magic sets and more so into the sort of professional magic as we know it?
Yeah, I think mentalism's interesting. I always found it interesting as soon as I got into magic and I started watching other magicians. But I think mentalism is, when you do it, it's hard to remember when you didn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I always think that the learning curve to get into mentalism is actually quite steep. And because when you first start learning all the methods, you can't quite comprehend that that's how the person that you saw do that thing does that thing, if that makes sense. So like, when you first learn a peak, the fact that the method is you just look at it is...
It sounds like too good to be true.
Yeah, so I was reading 13 Steps, I remember, and I was watching the Richard Osterland 13 Steps videos. Was kind of my first intro to mentalism, and I remember thinking, that's not like mind reading. That surely doesn't work. And then as you get into it, obviously, you kind of learn that it actually does work, and it works quite well. But that was quite early, I think. I think one of the other weird things as well, which maybe answers another question that you probably weren't going to ask, is that when I was younger, until a couple of years ago, actually, I used to bite my nails really badly, like really badly, to the point where they were really horrible to look at. And, the edges of my fingers were kind of would bleed and stuff. And so when I started doing professional gigs, I started leaning towards, especially close-up, like mentalism more than magic, because with magic, you're watching the magician's hands.
Yeah.
And I got super self-conscious about that. But with mentalism, the frame is more up here and it's more like face, and the hands are secondary. So that was one of the reasons I felt more comfortable performing mentalism, because people weren't looking at my hands. Which, that's kind of one of the reasons that I started painting my nails black, was to stop myself biting my nails, and it worked. And I just haven't stopped.
Fair. Yeah. Do you prefer performing mentalism, or do you prefer performing magic, or is it sort of a general level playing field? Because I feel like some people prefer mentalism, because in my opinion, and certainly when I was reading The Psychology of Magic, an incredible book by Gustav and Alice, they talk about when they did a study on why people liked magic, I think it was something like 60% of people enjoyed mentalism more so than stuff with cards and coins and things like that. And I do think it's down to, obviously, it being very personable, and obviously you're creating a connection. But would you say from a performative perspective, you enjoy it more so, or is it sort of the same?
I think it's interesting. Well, first, it's interesting you said that they said in the book that people enjoy watching mentalism more. I find anyway, recently I've noticed I get about 50-50 reactions either way. Like when I do some magic and then mentalism, they go, oh, like the magic trick was cool, but like the phrase is just sleight of hand.
Yeah.
But the mind reading stuff, I've got no idea how you could possibly even do that. But then conversely to that, I do often hear, oh, the mind reading stuff, that's really cool, but I love the card tricks and I love the sleight of hand. So it's interesting, because I think there is a bit of balance there.
I think it might be the shift in society, I think. Obviously, as we're getting more into the likes of TikTok and Instagram and very fast-paced mediums, that like dopamine hit that's needed probably comes more so from card tricks and coin tricks and things like that, and less so from long story-driven performances. So maybe something to do with that, or
I think definitely
depends on the person.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the person, but I think you're definitely right that and I actually think if you look at the magic industry as well, I think tricks tend to go down that route a bit more these days as well. They tend to be quite quick, fast-paced things, and I've actually noticed that a lot since working in the shop recently. Every new trick that's released is usually great, but it's almost like one moment.
Yeah.
And sure, you're paying 30 quid for an amazing moment or whatever, but then when I'm trying to build it into, or thinking how I might use it in a performance, I'm like, well, I don't know how to build a 6-minute routine from this one
30 seconds
moment. It's that, right? So that's super interesting. But in terms of magic and mentalism for performing, I go through phases. At the moment, I'm actually enjoying performing magic a little bit more. I don't really know why.
I mean, it's nice. It's nice to have a bit of variety. I feel like when you're doing regular gigs performing the same material, it's very easy to get into a lull of just sort of going through the motions. Obviously, most working magicians don't really change their material because it's the stuff that they know works well. It's the stuff they've been doing for years. But at the same time, you do get into that sort of robotic style of performance where you're just doing it for the thousandth time and there's no personality behind it. It's just the same script. And yeah, I think changing it up is probably what keeps it sort of fresh and appealing. And then obviously you're delving into stage stuff as well with Insane, doing the big illusions. So that's certainly a big change from sneaking peeks of billets and doing card slides. So
yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, very, very different aspect. Which takes us perfectly onto our sort of quickfire section, which every time I intro this section, quickfire is in inverted brackets because it's never ever quickfire, but we'll see how we get on. Obviously, by all means, sort of elaborate on these. As I mentioned at the start, we can't really delve super deep into methods and things like that, but obviously in the likes of the favourite slide question, you can explain if we need to, we can just code things a la sort of Penn and Teller style.
Yeah, okay, sure.
So the first question being, what is your favourite sleight? Obviously, as I mentioned there, you do mentalism, you do hypnosis, you do magic, you do stage stuff. Doesn't necessarily have to be card sleight. Could be coins, could be mentalism, could be anything.
But when I thought about this before, I did think of a card sleight. So maybe we'll go with that, and then I'll maybe add another like bonus sleight in. My favorite card sleight for sure is the diagonal palm shift. It's one of those ones that I use very not very regularly because I had this conversation recently with somebody in the shop, actually, a kind of a fairly new magician who was just learning the basics. And I think they were learning from one of Ben Earl's kind of beginner series. I think the Illusionist put out.
Sensational series.
And yeah, I've not seen it myself, but I can only imagine it's brilliant. And the guy had really good things to say about it. And he was a really beginner card magician. He came in asking for some advice on a couple of things. And I can't remember the exact sleight he was trying to learn. It might have been the pass or something. But he was saying that some of the advice was given by Ben Earl was this. And I sort of, I was like, that is good advice. But if you're learning, to be honest, just make it work. Because realistically, in a performance situation, whatever works the best is the right thing to do in that situation. And whatever you're most comfortable with and whatever you can do the most smoothly without being distracted or, and so I think the DPS kind of comes into that. I don't really use it because there's usually a better move in a real life performing environment that doesn't stress me out as much.
Tons of people have said the DPS for their favourite sleight.
Have they?
And I think it's purely down to the fact of how tactile and how nice it feels when you get it correctly.
The feeling of when you get it right, like in your own hands, that feeling, the kind of the literal mechanics of it feels really satisfying.
Yeah, unbelievably satisfying. And Ben Earl comes up all the time as well, purely because of, as you mentioned there, a lot of what Ben does, he's probably one of the most talented card magicians in the UK, certainly, at least. But a lot of the stuff that he performs, especially on the likes of the Unreal Magic set, is very, very simple in terms of methodology. And then he enhances that with the most phenomenal storytelling and the most incredible scripting, which I think's, it's certainly been an eye-opener over the past few years looking at Ben's stuff and really sort of taking admiration for the old things. It's made us go back to the basics that you forget about, because when you've picked up a deck of cards for a few years, you then start shuffling into all the knuckle-busting move monkey stuff, and you never really go back to simple things like the cross-cut force and all of the stuff that you'd class as beginner, because you just think, oh wait, if I've learned that years ago and it's at the front end of the beginner books, then why should I use it? But I honestly think some of that's the best.
Totally. I didn't use the crosscut force for probably the best part of the last 10 years. And then the past year and a half, I've used it constantly. And it's actually a phenomenal force if you use it correctly. It's great. So I like the DPS for cards. I guess for non-cards, I'll maybe just drop two in real quick. A one-handed cube solve is like one of my favorite sleights, because I think there's so many amazing things that you can do with it. Other than just solving the cube I should say.
Hello, Michael Murray, by any chance?
Yeah. I mean, if anyone's ever seen me perform on stage outside of Insane in the past like 6 years, there's a very good chance that you've seen me do Michael Murray's. I don't know. Am I allowed to say the name of the trick?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Michael Murray's The Solution. It's just a phenomenal piece of scripting and psychology and magic. And it's been like the closer to my cabaret act for probably about 6 years now, actually. Actually, maybe longer, maybe even 7 or 8 years.
I think everybody that does any sort of cube magic has The Solution in there. Like, it's just beautiful. It's such a great routine. And a great moment for the spectator as well.
Yeah, I actually saw, I think, I could be wrong with this, but I'm pretty sure in the Justin Willman special that just aired on Netflix, he does it in there as well.
Yeah.
It's a great piece of magic. It's been my closer in my cabaret set for about 6 or 7 years. The one-handed cube solve, love that. And I guess it's not necessarily a slight, but I think I'd be remiss as a mentalist if I didn't mention the flapless envelope or a Shaxson flap. I've used that for more different routines than I could possibly even remember, to be honest. Such
a phenomenal utility item.
Yeah, that's great.
When we were writing the Durham Fringe show, me and Tom, we've sort of delved into a few things with this methodology wise. So yeah, I'm very excited to see how that comes into fruition. It's just such a great utility that you wouldn't think about otherwise.
Yeah, there's just so many cool things you can do with it, and I think I've used it for 5 or 6 different routines in completely different ways as well, right? Like, because obviously it can be like a ditch, a switch, a steal. Like, there's so many different things you can do with it.
Yeah, it's sensational. We're going to move on to the next one, which is your favorite plot in Magic or Mentalism, as I mentioned before. Do you have a particular favorite plot?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because it's a bit boring as a mentalist, but I love a Q&A. Obviously, I love a Q&A. The weirder and deeper and darker a Q&A, the better. I've read almost every resource I can get my hands on the Q&A plot and methods, and I've done a bunch in the past myself. Whenever I do a full length solo mentalism show, there's usually a pretty substantial Q&A in there. I just think, again, to bring it back to the kind of cliche, if you could really read someone's mind, that's what it would look like. People just think of stuff and maybe they write it down and stick it in a little box. But they think of stuff and you tell them the stuff that they're thinking of. And it's as clean and direct as that.
As pure as it gets when it comes to sort of direct mind reading.
Yeah.
Is there a particular Q&A that you use, or is it sort of an amalgamation of the various different resources that you've pulled from?
I've done a bunch in the past. My absolute favorite Q&A that I ever did, I did my Fringe show in 2022, which was a solo Fringe. Yeah, 2020, might have been 2021, I can't remember. It's a show I did called Mysteries, and I used an adaptation of one of Luc Germain's methods, which is called the 3 types. And it's a really clever combination of sort of dual reality, a really subtle but clever marking system. There's a little bit of one ahead in there as well, and sort of some pseudo-psychology in there, but the pseudo-psychology is part of the method rather than part of the presentation, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So I think it's just really cleverly constructed. So his is about different types of personalities, and I adapted the method. The method's largely the same in the one that I've been doing, but just a different presentation, so it feels a bit different.
Yeah, Luke has such a beautiful way of layering methods. So they sort of cancel each other out. If somebody goes down one route, they're like, no, it can't be that because of this, and it's just so perfectly executed.
And dual reality in that routine is, so actually, maybe not a slight, but my favorite concept in all of Magic is dual reality, which maybe that goes back to the solution. There's dual reality in there. Obviously Q&A, there's loads of dual reality, but the dual reality in the 3 types is just phenomenal. It's beautiful.
Is one thing we've certainly mentioned this in the past. I believe myself and Jamie Dawes were talking about it. I think a lot of magicians are very scared of dual reality and
Oh,
maybe don't utilize it because of that fear. But the strength of it when you can get it right is just
yeah,
unparalleled.
I just think it's the most beautiful piece of like psychology and methods mixed together to create like the most impossible thing. Like if I was to list my favorite mentalism effects or plots, almost all of them contain dual reality. You know, like PK touches, the solution, a
Yeah.
Q&A act. Honestly, a lot of drawing duplications and things like that. The drawing duplication I do relies on dual reality as well. Um, but yeah, I get why people are a little scared, and also dual reality relies on a bit of scale. So
Yeah.
you need a decent number of people there to construct a solid dual reality, depending on the method or the effect. And so that's a bit of a barrier to entry for a lot of people, because if you don't perform regularly in front of more than, let's say, 30 people, it becomes a lot more difficult. But as soon as
Yeah.
you hit like 30 people and above, you're pretty safe.
Yeah. The opportunities are endless, which is, yeah, it's a big barrier to entry. But,
Yeah,
if you can start utilizing it, then
yeah.
it's
If
fantastic.
stage isn't what you normally do, and you just do the odd stage gig, then I can totally understand why that would be a little scary. But
Yeah.
no, it's just like if there's an opportunity to add a bit of dual reality into something, I'll fire it straight in there.
And I think what's great, as you mentioned there with Luke's stuff, is a lot of his dual reality stuff, the realities on either side are getting an equally impossible reality. Whereas some dual realities, one's significantly stronger than the other, and you almost feel bad for the person that's getting that sort of secondary reality. Whereas a lot of Luke's things, you're getting like heavy hitting, regardless of
Yeah,
how it's looked at.
I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I think my view on that is that if the two realities aren't at least similar levels of amazement, then it's bad dual reality.
Yeah.
Um, like I actually sometimes think, you know, there's dual reality where you sort of like maybe instant stooge or you know stooge some one of the parties in question.
Yeah.
I actually don't necessarily think that even counts as dual reality. That's just you
Cheating.
know stooging. You
It's
know,
cheating. Yeah.
yeah.
That's fair. This might be difficult. Obviously, owning a magic shop for several years now, books are something that a lot of people delve into, and you probably see a lot come through the door. So, do you have a particular favorite book, or what, like set of books? If one sort of peeks ahead, perfect, because it's going on social media, and I need one of them to slightly tip it.
Yeah,
But if you've got two or three sort of honorable mentions as well, then by all means do so.
yeah. I mean, to be totally honest with you, in my shop anyway, we stock a fairly limited set of books, and the reason for that is that they're really expensive to get from the States. They all ship over, and by the time you pay for shipping and stuff, it's just like the
Yeah.
profit margins. It's boring, but the profit margins are so tiny that we tend to just order them in when people ask for them.
Yeah.
But I have a couple of favorite books, I guess. I mean, um, it's a bit of a cliche. Everyone said it, so we'll kind of scoot over it. But obviously, Maximum Entertainment by Ken Weber.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal book. Just changed the way I looked at performing on stage completely. If you want to do stage stuff and you haven't read it, do yourself a favor and go and buy it. But magic books. Recently, I've read again Mentalism by Assy Wins Before We Begin,
Yeah.
which is all about pre-show and pre-show work. And I've done loads and loads of pre-show over the years, but even with a good amount of experience in pre-show, some of the ideas in that book and the executions of those ideas are just phenomenal. Like stuff that I would never have thought of.
As he's sensational. Just
Yeah,
as a thinker alone. Never mind even the books that he's come out with and the routines and effects. Like Double Exposure, man. Such a
yeah,
sensational card routine.
great
And
trick.
then to be able to have all of the incredible thinking and stuff that he does consulting wise as well. The guy's
Yeah,
a demon.
very like that. And then the other one that I've read in the past couple of years that stuck out to me is I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but is it Napes by Roberto Mancilla?
Okay, yeah.
It's kind of a parlor. It was published by Vanishing Ink, but it's a parlor card magic book. And it's a lovely little book. It's just got some really cool effects. There's one kind of essay in the middle of it that really interested me. And actually, I tried it a couple of times. It didn't work in performance the way I hoped it would, but it's really interesting thinking about the general card principle. Which is where I won't go into meta, it's a common principle, but his thinking on it's really interesting, where a bunch of people think they see different cards, but they see the same thing, and how you use that to create some really cool routines. Yeah, it's a really cool book. It's got some nice thinking, kind of stand-up parlor card magic. That's really, really practical as well.
Are there any books in particular that you find yourself going back to, whether it be mentalism or magic, that you're sort of... I know a lot of people have their favorite books for their own reasons, and then some people have favorite books specifically because they're things that they're using incredibly often and sort of coming back to.
Yeah, I think the only book that I read regularly or jump into regularly is Maximum Entertainment. To be honest, yeah, if ever have a thought about something to do with a show that I'm working on, and how to make something work, usually I remember a little something from that book and I can flick back through it and find it. And the advice there is just so solid, and so it's really hard to question it, to be honest, because everything I've ever tried to apply from that book has been successful.
It's crazy how well it sort of stood the test of time, because Maximum Entertainment's quite an old, I say old, in the grand scheme of how young we are.
They released 2.0, which is basically the exact same book, but just updated for modern sensibilities.
Yeah. Even the original one still sort of applies. Obviously, it needs tweaks here and there.
I've actually not read, or I don't own a copy of 2.0. I've got the original. So sometimes it's quite funny. It's like, oh, go and hire a camcorder for the day and film your show, or something like that. And obviously, I'm sure the new one says set your phone up at the back of the room. So as far as I'm aware, they're the same book, but the 2.0 just makes more sense in the modern world. But yeah, I've still got the original, and it's it does sometimes. You can tell sometimes that it's a little old, but the advice is, as you say, still
old.
Yeah, it's immaculate.
Do you have a particular favorite performance that you've seen? In the past, I've opened this up to both magic and just general sort of theatre or performance in general. Is there anybody that sort of springs to mind?
Yeah, so we're coming up. It's not far away from the Edinburgh Fringe in August, and this is not magic at all. But in February and March, we were over with Insane Magic at the Adelaide Fringe Festival in Australia, so we got to see loads of shows there. My favorite show I saw there was a comedy show called Classic Penguins by Gary Starr. And Corey, while you're in Edinburgh in August, 100% you have to go see it. I'll be going to see it again. Gary Starr is an Australian comedian, and the show is he has all of the classic Penguin novels that have the kind of orange and white covers, and he has them on a bookshelf, and there's a little camera on top of the bookshelf, and basically he runs through them in order. And this is not doing it justice, but he acts them out in different ways. But the comedy is built around the titles of the book. So sometimes you don't know what the joke is until he slaps the book in front of the camera, and then it all makes sense. Okay. But the kicker to it is that he does the entire show completely naked, everything out. No, he wears a collar, a kind of Shakespearean collar, and he wears swimming flippers to make himself look like the penguin on the cover of the logo of the publisher Penguin. But he's, other than that, stark bollock naked, which is obviously hilarious in the first place. But then the clever thing about it is that you get quite used to it. And about halfway through the show, you almost forget that he's naked. But he obviously realizes that and then reminds you with something funny that he's naked. But the whole show, I've never laughed that hard from start to finish, consistently and constantly through a whole show.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just phenomenal.
I am both
the boring
incredibly excited to see that, and also a little reluctant as well.
Yeah, my mum was asking for Fringe show recommendations, and I recommended that for her and the girls, and I was like, I will warn you, he is completely naked in it, but once you get over that, it's great.
So you won't be going to see that with your mum? You're sending her around the girls separately.
No,
Yeah.
I actually would. I actually would go and see it with my mom. It's really funny. And as I said, the nudity in it isn't like, it's not like nudity in the sense that it's not meant to be
Yeah.
like shocking, or it's not like meant to be sexy or sultry or anything like that. It's just meant to be. It's meant to enhance the comedy, and it does. Like that show wouldn't work if he wasn't naked, but not. Does that make sense? I
Yes.
don't know.
Yeah. I don't want to delve into sort of spoiler territory.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd like to see it, and I assume a lot of other people potentially this thing might be going up to the Fringe. So check it out, and we can all have like a little get together afterwards and figure out what on earth we watched.
100%.
And the magic answer?
The magic answer would be Darren's show, An Evening of Wonders.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very classic, Darren.
Yeah, it's going back a bit. It's definitely my favorite show. I think it's that one anyway. It's the one with the chair test at the end with McFly as the singing the song as the kicker.
Is that an Evening Wonder?
It's not an Evening
Wonder. Or is that something?
It's Enigma because
Enigma. Oh, it spells out.
Yeah,
it's eggs. I can't remember what all the letters are. Milk.
Yeah. Egg, needle. Yeah. But anyway, you're right. It's not an Evening Wonder. It's Enigma.
There we go. It's like I said, it was such a sensational show, and that show sort of revolutionized that Darren-esque full culmination of effects, and it all coming to this big sort of full circle moment.
Yeah, I think that sort of defined the mentalism show for the 10 years after it existed, to be honest. And I think you'd be hard pushed to find a mentalist in the entire world who wasn't somehow influenced by that specific show, whether they know it or not. Yeah,
I'm excited to see how mentalism develops and who sort of is going to be the next figurehead to shape mentalism in that sense. Because obviously there's a lot of mentalists in terms of smaller performance styles or releases and things like that who are sort of forefronting mentalism and the development of mentalism. But I don't think there's necessarily been anybody to the extent of Darren in terms of how it shaped stage performance especially, and show structure and thinking. So I'm excited to see the future of how that sort of pans out and where it goes from here, because a pretty high bar to set.
It is. I mean, I don't know if I want to get into this too much, but I think the difficulty with mentalism at the moment is that the whole world is changing as we speak, to the point where mentalism is really hard to make convincing, because people's guesses previously that would have been outlandish and crazy and impossible or unattainable for how you did the trick now are quite realistic, and actually often might be pretty spot on when it comes to like tech and AI even. So it's difficult now because you've got to take that into account quite heavily, and to do that and also build a performance style at the same time that becomes as iconic as Darren is quite a big ask for anyone, I think.
Yeah, it comes back to the sort of problem of things being too perfect and almost too impossible. Is to what extent can you make something magical and impossible without it being so much so that the person goes, well, it has to have been this because there's no other way it could have been done, or it was staged.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously hiding technology in impossible places is where we're at the moment. But people are getting more and more aware of how easily you can hide technology, I think. So yeah, it's just tough.
And obviously with the likes of production companies and magic retailers, in order to drum up sort of excitement and enthusiasm for a product, they have to put out trailers that are then public access, and they have to put out social media posts that are then getting picked up by lay people, which is both frustrating, but obviously for the development of the sort of magic industry, it kind of has to happen, which is, part and parcel, both frustrating and
it's super difficult. I think mentalism especially, I tend to default to the kind of more classic methods anyway. just because they're surefire
fail safes, yeah.
And yeah, exactly. Fail safe, they're surefire, and I think they're less detectable as well because, you know, there's a lot more to figure out than something that's
Just that
technology
simple,
based.
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, again, it's that layering of methods, and I think that's where technology comes in best in the likes of mentalism. Is it being used more as a utility than a method itself, using
Definitely.
it to sort of guide and assist as opposed to just straight up being the solution to the problem.
Definitely.
But yeah, as you mentioned, those classic methods have very much so stood the test of time, and the likes of billets and things like that are forever going to be super like steady, and you don't require Wi-Fi in the middle of a festival, for example.
Well, yeah, exactly. Or
something that's being juggled at the moment.
yeah. Well, we'll see.
We're gonna go slightly controversial, and then we'll pull it back around to nice and nicey. What is your magic industry gripe? This could be something that doesn't necessarily belong in the magic industry as a whole. It could be something that you think's overdone or overperformed. Is there anything in particular that sort of you think should be brought to the community?
Can I give two for this as well?
Yeah, certainly.
I know I'm being a little bit greedy with all these, but okay, we'll go with like routine first. I absolutely cannot stand vanishing bandana style routines. Like anything with a pre-recorded voiceover where the magician is doing the steps of the voiceover, I just can't stand it. Like, with maybe the exception of making the whole routine yourself. So an original trick or a different trick to the usual ones. Making your own voiceover or plot for that voiceover or reason for that voiceover over existing, with maybe the exception of that. I think it's just lazy. I think we're better than that. Like, I don't care which version of it you're doing. It's not a trick. You've literally, it's the definition of buying something off of the shelf and performing it the way it was handed to you.
Yeah.
I think that's everyone's better than that.
A big issue in itself is purchasing magic and doing it word for word and doing it as it's handed to you. I think everything should be taken as its own, and you should take it and routine it and re-routine it and script it for yourself to fit your persona. Because I think a lot of people, especially, I know for yourself as well, a lot of magic stuff just ends up in that magic drawer. And you never use it because you're like, oh, that was cool, but it was disappointing. But it's only disappointing because you don't like how it worked realistically, or you don't like something about it. But if you can take that concept or that trick and you can figure out what it was you liked and what you didn't like, and you interchange that, then you start allowing sort of bigger, fresher ideas, and it totally revamps what you're doing and gets 100% stuff out of the drawer.
Exactly, and that's it. Everyone's got such massive magic drawers full of junk. Like, why are you doing Vanishing Bandana or the Australian deck or whatever it is with the deck dick kind of dichotomy? Like, just, you're better than that. Unless you're a hobbyist jumping on stage at a little local magic club show or something, that's like, go for it. It's fine. It's easy. It's funny. But and it kills me inside whenever I watch a magic show and they do one of those tricks and the audience love it. Like, they're lapping it up, they're laughing.
That's the issue. The issue is it works.
Goodness sake.
Yeah.
I mean, at the risk of possibly being called a hypocrite here, we actually almost considered putting a similar version to this in our Glastonbury show. With a pre-recorded thing. We were going to do drinking shoe, but drinking welly. And I had the idea of, but also the caveat to this is that I wanted to sell it as real. So none of this, I got a trick delivered and we're learning it together. I wanted to sell it as, one of our tricks got genuinely stolen. And we're going to get one of you guys to record voice notes on WhatsApp. And like, it's like you've got a trick and you're reading the instructions in a voice note. And that's the excuse for it's actually quite a good idea. I don't really know why I'm giving this away on a podcast, but you know how
this will come out after Glastonbury, so it's fine.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, true, actually. the whole shtick there is that you do the whole method, you do the whole routine, and then the recording goes, but you did. The secret is you didn't actually do the thing. And then you go, no. That doesn't really make much sense to me. But if it's a voice note, it makes sense because you finish the previous voice note, you do the action, and then when you play the next one, you realize that you should have listened to them all, or you should have listened to the next one before you did the action. So yeah,
that's such a normal thing for magicians as well. Watching instructions and doing it in part, and then you get to the end and you go, "Ah, shit, I've done something wrong here because I've not listened to the full thing. I've just listened and delved straight into it and picked up the gimmick and snapped the thread."
Which is a thing that everyone does with voice notes, I think.
Yeah.
So the caveat to the reason that I think this is maybe slightly, this doesn't count for my hatred of this, is that A, we're just doing it for a one-off Glastonbury show, and the drinking welly fits that theme.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And B, we're adding the voice note, and we're adding the fact that it's contextual to the fact that we're in a campsite and a music festival, and this, that, the other. Like those bits just work together for that specific case. We're not just doing a generic voiceover trick. Yeah. So that's my little asterisk there.
You dug a hole, but you dug your way out as well, so it's fine.
Almost. And then my other one is industry gripe is people. I guess the simplification of it is the award-winning thing. Like people's websites saying they're award-winning, but also just people using like accolades in a misleading or maybe even a way where they're lying. Like I don't want to call people liars, but I just think, again, we're better than that. Like you don't need to say that you're award-winning unless you've like won actual awards.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I've got. In fact, I'm almost 100% certain you will not find the phrase award-winning anywhere on my website. I've won a few things, but I just don't think they're worthy of putting up there. Like when people go, "Oh, you're award-winning. What did you win?" I don't want to be like, "Oh, the local Magic Club competition in 2019." Do you know what I mean? Like it's just you can be good and you can say that you're good without sort of pretending that everyone else says that you're good. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like, your show and your name should precede you anyway, and you shouldn't have to write how good you are in that sense. Like, if you're good, chances are, I know certainly for quite a lot of people, most recommendations for gigs and things like that come through word of mouth, or they come through seeing you as a performer. So you don't necessarily have to go out of your own way to lie about the accolades that you have, just to like over prove your worth.
Yeah, it's just the dishonesty in that, I think, and the like saying you sell things out when you don't sell things out. Like you don't need to say that. No one's saying, "Oh, well, he doesn't say anywhere he sells out all of his shows." Well, you see that a lot on the Fringe. People sort of claim things that they maybe haven't quite achieved.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a shame because it cheapens it when you actually do it, right? So if you we're very lucky, and we'll chat about this later, but in the same Magic, we sold out every single show we've ever done at the Edinburgh Fringe so far, which is a pretty amazing claim to fame. And we actually have done it. We have the receipts to prove it, which is great. But if we hadn't, and we said we did, then one day when we do sell out, we've cheapened it because
has no gravitas.
Exactly. No one believes us because we lied about it last time.
It also cheapens it for everyone else, in the sense that if one person sold out a single show in a 5-seater venue, and it's a sold out run, as opposed to somebody that's doing 30 days in a row non-stop in a 300-seater, it cheapens it for all of the other shows as well, and so on.
Yeah, this is unfortunately a problem with the system there rather than the individuals, I think. But the Edinburgh Fringe, especially if you only do one show and you sell it out, you qualify for the sold out laurel, and you're allowed to say that you sold out the Fringe. But equally, if you sell out a 300-seater 27 days in a row, you still get the same thing that says sold out. And obviously, they're not quite the same thing. But that's actually a whole other conversation.
Yep, technicalities, man. But let's not delve into that. That could be opening a whole can of worms. We're going to bring this back round to sort of niceties before we then get into a little bit more in depth about your past and your future. And this is, who were your influences in Magic? If you have sort of, let's go with about 5 or 6 sort of names that maybe spring to mind that have influenced either your performance style or methods or things like that.
I think it'd be, again, remiss not to say Darren, of course. Again, hard. I wouldn't dwell on it too long, but hard to find probably a mentalist in the world that hasn't in some way been influenced by him.
Yeah.
Definitely Luke Germain as well. I'd say more methods over performance style. I think his thinking is brilliant. I would love to be more Germain in my performance. Like, I love the way he tells stories and the way he draws the audience in. And I do try my best to do that, but I think, to be totally honest, I'm just not one. I think I'm quite good at it. Not nearly as good as Luke Germain is at that side of things.
Yeah, I think Luke could almost hold an audience just on stories without the magic, which makes it so much more so enjoyable, because the magic then enhances the stories and the stories enhance the magic, and it builds up.
For a couple of years, he did a full hour show that was just a Q&A. The entire show was start to finish on a blindfolded Q&A act. Yeah. And I saw that show probably 5 or 6 times between the Edinburgh Fringe and the Edinburgh Magic Festival and a couple other places. And that show is effectively an hour of him telling stories about the people in the room. The method is phenomenal, but the method repeats itself every 4 or 5 minutes. It's not the method that holds the audience. It's his ability to command them.
Which is crazy. Like, Q&As are difficult in themselves in general anyway. But to do it for an hour straight and
that's
make
all
it,
you have as well. Nothing else to fall back on. No big visual reveal. No, the word was never upside down in the number. Nothing. Just people wrote down questions, put them in a paper bag at the top.
Another little gripe there that was sneaking out there by any chance?
Sorry?
Another little gripe there that was sneaking out with the one of those. No comment.
No comment.
But yeah, I think to be able to hold that and to be able to repeat the same routing, the same methoding, but still make it different enough every single time to maintain an audience engagement, especially to the high level that he does, is absurd. Is ridiculous. Because even when you're doing stuff like we mentioned before with very quick, fast-paced methodology and fast-paced tricks, you have the magic to fall back onto to let you sort of keep the audience engaged. But to be able to do that with just your words is, a whole different kettle of fish.
And I think actually a lovely segue out of that then is another one of my influences is Aaron Crow.
0 words.
0 words. Yeah, exactly. I was lucky enough to get the chance to kind of work with him in Edinburgh a couple of years ago when he did the Fringe. I can't remember what year that was. But I went to see the show a bunch of times in that capacity. And aside from the fact that he's just a lovely human being, like a great guy, watching that full-length, hour-long Edinburgh Fringe show where he didn't say a single word in the entire hour was just like, I always think about that and think about how he could command the audience, keep it engaging and entertaining, give instructions on, how the method relied on.
Without opening his mouth.
And communicate without saying a single word for the entire hour. Like, I always think about how visual that show was and how you just don't maybe need as many words as you think you do. So
we've got Aaron for the Newcastle Magic Circle President's Dinner.
Great.
Towards the back end of this year, so I'm incredibly excited to see him in person. Because the guy's a sensational performer.
Curious to see what he did there, because obviously I think everyone's probably seen his like AGTX and his BGTX and whatnot. But obviously in that hour-long show, he had stuff that was I don't want to call it filler because it's not filler, but it's not his like headline routines.
Big scary stunts,
Yeah, the big things that he's kind of known for. There was like some kind of choir, more like nuanced routines in there, and you still carried them.
You need that though. Like, if everything from start to finish of that hour-long show is as intense as his main tricks, my goodness, you wouldn't breathe.
PTSD.
Yeah, you'd come out of that traumatized.
Yeah.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm sure there's loads more as well. There's definitely people that I'm omitting here that I can't really think of, but I can't really think who it would be. But there's definitely a few people that have influenced me in the sense of the pace of a show and the pacing of a show. I've got very strong feelings about the pace of magic shows and how it should be, and what audiences enjoy versus what they kind of don't. And I'm certain that came from seeing it done right, and also seeing it done wrong, but seeing it done right enough times by some people. I just can't, off like the top of my head, think who they would be. In fact, let me just think for a second, because we're also really lucky in Edinburgh that for the past 12 or 13 years, I think we've had the Edinburgh Magic Festival, which when it started was huge, and we had some really great names come to Edinburgh for that. So, like, we had Xavier Mortimer back in the day, way before he was as
social media sensation,
well known and popular as he is now. He was still as phenomenal as he is now back then. People like that. So I'm certain there'll be some of the people I saw in there, but
seeing Xavier's skipping rope levitation at Blackpool a few years ago.
Oh, wild, isn't it?
Yeah,
just
unbelievable.
Wild.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Guy's crazy.
Yeah, it's just such smart magic as well. And yeah, you can. I don't know if he still does, but at the time when he was doing Edinburgh, I got to spend a bit of time with him, and he was composing all his own music for his shows as well. So, well, I know that he still does like the one-man band routine.
Yeah, sensational.
And the mirror routine where he's in the mirror. So all of that music he composed it himself, which in itself is like a pretty amazing skill. I guess in that sense, seeing people like that. So I'm also a huge believer in trying to do as much of it yourself and learning how to do as much of it yourself as you can.
Yeah.
If not for the sake of just learning stuff. And then if you need to get it outsourced, at least you can still speak the same language as that person because you've learned the basics of what it is you're asking for. And so I guess seeing people like Xavier Mortimer probably did influence that as well.
Yes, there's people sort of at the forefront of magic that are doing things so different and really utilizing the sort of way that magic's changing over time. Like Trig Watson is doing sensational stuff with technology that he's really embracing. But it's nice to see it done in a way that's not necessarily like covert, as a lot of technology is currently being used. It's very overtly used. And it's really cool to see the innovations that people like himself are coming up with as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Just a quick interruption before we get into the next question. Obviously, with this podcast comes a ton of recommendations from guests of either books or tricks, and logically, I turn to MAGICBOX. Not only do they usually have exactly what I need, but I can get it the next day. Plus, Graham and the team really know their magic, so if I have any questions or queries about a product, they're ready to answer over the phone or email. And as a bonus for you listeners at home, you can also grab 10% off with the code PATCT. Just head to magicbox.uk.com and use the code at the checkout. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. Now back to the episode. Let's delve a little bit into what sort of got you to where you are now. Specifically right in that room, sat with that incredibly fancy shirt on. That's a very cool shirt.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. It's quite magical, actually. Like potions and tarot cards.
Big fan. Love that. Let's delve back to when you were doing a lot of stuff. As we mentioned in the introduction, you headed yourself over to Toronto in Canada for quite a while to work on some of Jamie Allen's stuff. You worked on both Illusionarium and Magic Immersive, which are sort of a culmination of both, as the name suggests, magic and immersive entertainment. So, one, how did that come about, and what was it like sort of taking on that role?
Yeah, so it came about by a kind of series of crazy coincidences. At the time, just before this whole thing kicked off, my girlfriend at the time was Canadian for the sake of this podcast, and she was living in Edinburgh, and her visa was expiring, and we basically we were long distance for a while, wanted to find somewhere to live together, and we settled on Canada because it was easy enough for me to get a visa. So I applied for a visa for a kind of for 2 years, and got all the paperwork, booked a flight to move to Toronto, just off for fun, basically, not for any real reason, just to spend to kind of move there with her. And then COVID hit. So literally about 2 weeks before I was supposed to fly, they grounded all the planes and canceled all the flights. And I was here for another 5 months at that in Edinburgh. And I remember, I think it was somebody, in fact, it was Jamie posted in the members of the Magic Circle Facebook group saying that they were opening up a COVID-safe magic show in Toronto, and they were looking for local magicians. And if anyone was one or knew one, they were holding auditions on Zoom. And a bunch of people that knew that my plan was to move to Toronto tagged me in it and messaged me saying, what about this? And the conditions of my visa had changed because of COVID to say that I could only move to Toronto if I had a valid job offer. So I needed work before I could go there. So I sort of emailed Jamie and I was like, this is like weird and like a long shot, but I'm not local. I live in the UK. I live in Edinburgh. But I have a visa. I have the paperwork to work in Canada for a couple of years. I just need a valid job offer. And it was very confusing for everyone because they didn't expect anyone to be in that position, especially during COVID where no one was allowed to travel.
Yeah.
And then they checked all out and they checked out I was right. And yeah, I chatted with like Holly England and Harry DeCruz and Jamie. And long story short, they agreed to bring me over there and set me up as one of the lead magicians, one of the two lead magicians on that project. Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. And it's an interesting one because whenever I tell that story to people, they always, I guess they think, or they say that it was all very, very lucky. And it was very lucky. It all kind of happened. But I also think there's a bit of a lesson for myself there. You do have to put yourself in these positions and open yourself up to these opportunities before you can take them. So yeah, it was a bit of a series of coincidences that led to that.
So you mentioned that obviously you were working as sort of a lead role within both of these projects. What did that role itself entail, both for yourself and in terms of sort of a management-esque role over the other sort of performance styles?
Yeah, so so I flew out there. I helped Holly run the rehearsal periods. Holly England was very much in charge of the rehearsals and did a great job of it. When I sort of was there in support, so I was there at everyone else's rehearsal and making sure that they were doing it. Because also, for context, we did hire a lot of local magicians, and we also hired a lot of local actors as well. So some of the actors had no magic experience whatsoever, and some of the magicians, although they had magic experience, maybe didn't have stage experience or the type of experience that necessarily lended itself to what we wanted to do.
I can't remember who it was, but somebody said a while ago, it's easier to teach an actor magic than it is to teach a magician acting.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah.
I mean, without going into it too much, as that project progressed, we ended up with fewer magicians and more actors towards the middle and end of that project, because I think we learned that the difficult way. That the actors we had were actually all, for the most part, great. The magicians were of mixed abilities, should we say? But no, it was really interesting. And then so Jamie and Holly were there in Toronto with me, with Jamie's right hand man Tommy Bond, who's a borderline genius when it comes to all things theatre and technical. And once the show was installed, they then left Canada. They left Toronto and sort of left myself and Sean Watson, who's a Canadian magician, to look after the magic side of everything there. And yeah, so just, I had to keep an eye on everyone, make sure everyone was performing the shows how they were supposed to and keep it nice and consistent, which was a lot easier said than done. But it was a lot of just being present and existing. And the shows did also evolve while we were there. Things got added and things got taken away. So if something got added or taken away while like Jamie wasn't there, I had to kind of help make sure that everything stayed still worked magically and made sense. Because the production team were brilliant on it, but had no idea about magic, and sometimes they'd maybe change something, and I'd have to go and be like, actually, you can't do that because it gives away this part of the method, or it influences this, and that doesn't work because the plot of this routine relies on them seeing this first. So just things like that.
Yeah, which again is something that evidently you have taken then into things like the Fringe, because with obviously house techs and things like that, you need to be able to adapt and change things on the go, and to be able to help them understand why certain things need to be done in certain ways to adapt accordingly.
Yeah, well, as I said earlier, I'm a huge fan of learning like everything you can about kind of theatre and tech and sound and lights and projection and even like down to front of house and ticket sales and marketing. Because if you learn the basics of these, at least when you talk to the people who are experts at it, you speak their language, so you can do everything way more efficiently. And rather than having to spend 10 sentences explaining something, you can do it in 1 or 2, and they know exactly what you're doing, and you get what you want out of that situation because you know how to ask for it.
Yeah. For anybody that isn't necessarily as clued in as us, what was Illusionarium and Magic Immersive in terms of like the actual show side of things?
Yeah, so they're both slightly different. We changed the formats between the two, but the Illusionarium was a walkthrough experience to take you through the history of magic, starting in the Palais Royal in France, and you were talked to by a hologram of Houdini. We did a bullet catch routine in there that was developed by Jonathan Goodwin, and then you moved on to the Egyptian Hall in London, like kind of recreation of this, and you walked through this space into these different rooms, which were all kind of decorated and themed like these places would be. And then that had the top hat and tails magician, who talked you through the 5 rules of magic. So like appearance, levitation, vanish, penetration, things like that. And then we went through to the secret chamber, which was where we did a live water tank escape in front of sort of 30 people at a time, which is crazy. Also developed by Jonathan Goodwin and built by Greg Fruin. And then then we went to TV magic. So TV studio, now Penn and Teller actually on the TVs, and Penn and Teller talked people through the history of TV magic, and then did Woody Allen's Love Ritual with them through the screen. But they filmed that especially for us. And then we did the future of magic, which is all of Jamie's high-tech illusions and big sort of 180-degree LED screens and everything.
To jump back slightly for a second there, because of the way Illusionarium worked in that it was a walkthrough show, and obviously you have sets of guests moving through the experience and another set of guests essentially following behind, correct? Mm-hmm. In sort of the Dungeons-esque kind of sense, to bring it back to sort of a UK thing.
Yeah, totally.
The person doing those water escapes, are they doing that sort of back to back to back for each and every guest, or are you switching performers out?
So the performers in every other room, we're doing it back to back. So you do one show every 15 minutes. The show would last about 10 minutes. You'd have about 5 minutes to reset the show and take a breath, and then you do sort of 4 shows an hour for, I think it was like a 3-hour shift or something. So hilariously, one of the performers who was doing the bullet catch, now on their marketing, I won't name them, but on their marketing now claims to be the person in history who has completed the most successful bullet catches. Now, I think going back to my gripe earlier, we'll let him off with it, but sure. That was the one exception, that room. So in there, I believe in Illusionarium, we had 2, it might have even been 3. In fact, it was 3. We had 3 performers on each shift. So one person would be in the tank. So you would perform in the tank, and then you would go backstage and recover. They had a little recovery room. And then after the recovery, the next show, you would be the assistant. So you would help put the handcuffs on and do the secondary role, and then you would perform again. So you perform every 3rd show. So you're still doing it once every 45 minutes, but not once every 15.
There's still a lot of water escapes for
Yeah.
3 hours.
Those guys were phenomenal. They were like the hardest working people there. They all worked super hard to learn it in the first place. They got the breath training by Jonathan Goodwin, and they learned how to obviously escape from everything as well. And we had a real mix of, I think there were some synchronized swimmers, some professional divers, and some circus performers. So a couple of people that work in like Cirque du Soleil and similar places like that, who obviously during COVID didn't have a huge amount to do, so decided to nearly drown themselves once every 45 minutes for about a year.
Jeez.
But yeah.
But on a side note, I don't know if you've seen Cirque du Soleil's documentary Without a Net.
I've not actually. No, I don't know existed.
Sensational. So it's a documentary on what happened to Cirque during COVID and what happened to all of the performers and all of the things like that, and them sort of then getting back into things afterwards as well. And it's both an incredibly inspiring story and a very sort of moving story as well. It's It's a rough watch as sort of coming from an entertainment background.
Yeah.
You really feel for what they had to go through, but for anybody out there and for yourself, I'd highly recommend it. It's one of the best docu-series I've seen.
I love circus. Like, I am the biggest circus fan in the world. If there's ever a circus show kicking around, I'll see it. I see as many of them as I can at the Fringe. I'm my friends with a bunch of circus performers, and I just think it's like the most incredible thing. Like, I love circus of all kinds.
Yeah. Coming from sort of a parkour and freerunning background, our circus, we used to work in a circus facility that did circus on one side and parkour on the other. So things have sort of blended to and from those sort of industries as well. So very much so. Also a massive fan of the likes of Cirque and all of the other incredible traveling circuses around the world. Like,
totally.
The fact that those guys are putting their life on the line day in, day out, never mind entertaining, is absurd.
I saw 10,000 Hours, which is by a group called Gravity and Other Myths. The Adelaide Fringe. They're Australian, but they work worldwide, and they're at Edinburgh per year. I saw it in Adelaide, and oh my goodness, that show is the wildest, most, like, I had decided that I was giving that show a standing ovation about 4 minutes into the show, and I'd heard stuff about the show going into it, so I was expecting big things, but I was literally like waiting for the end of the show so that I could stand up. It is just astronomically good.
I think we were going to go see it last year, but every time we went to book it, it was sold out.
Yeah, it's
understandable.
If you can ever get a chance to see, to be honest with you, all their shows, all of Gravity and Other Myths shows are brilliant, but 10,000 Hours was just like nothing I've ever seen before.
I'll check after this and see if it's on this year, and if it is, I'll get booked in.
I'm almost certain it will be.
Obviously, from there, you sort of came back to the UK, and Wonder & Co. happened. Edinburgh's first and only magic shop. So how did that happen? What inspired Wonder & Co.? And how do you find a balance between both performing and obviously running your own business, and then obviously family life and things like that as well? It's a lot to juggle.
Yeah, it's been really tough, to be honest. So the slight backstory there is, when I came back to the UK after Canada, I didn't really have much to do, because I'd sort of given up all my gigs, my regular gigs, to my friends, because I was away in Canada for just over 2 years. And when I got back, I was like, my options are to either try and find gigs again and try and find work again, or create the work. And I decided to create the work for myself. And it was actually Tom Bolton, who good friend, mutual friend of both of ours, suggested to me. He has the Magic Corner in Durham, which I'm sure most people are familiar with, which is a small magic venue, which is brilliant, that he performs at just day in, day out, basically. And he suggested to me, well, why don't you just open a Magic Corner, but do it in Edinburgh? There's way more tourists in Edinburgh. If it works here, it would work in Edinburgh. And I was like, that's a great idea. So I set to work on that idea. I found a space I really loved that I could see it working in, and I approached the landlord, got a lease, approached the council and asked for permission to do it. Before I got the lease, they said yes, that's no problem. And then as soon as I got the lease and applied officially for planning permission, they denied it and said it would be too loud for the retail unit that I'd taken. So I ended up in this place where I had this lease, didn't know what to do with it. But the caveat was that I could basically do what I wanted with the space as long as the primary purpose was retail. so I was like, okay, I'll open a magic shop. So I sort of accidentally ended up with a magic shop, which is kind of strange. And yeah, and then a couple of weeks after or a couple of months after I first opened it, I got the gig with the Purple Rabbit in Dom Chambers out in Australia, which lasted just over a year. And yeah, so I ended up out there doing that instead. And so it's been a bit of a slow start. The magic shop itself is really, really hard work. It makes absolutely no money. It makes enough to pay for itself, like it pays for itself. But I've worked in it it's been open for 2 years now. I've never paid myself a single penny from it. And since I got back, I've been doing some shows in the space, and they do well as well. So I don't know, it's tough because I really love it, and I've seen it make such a positive impact in the community in Edinburgh and in Scotland as well. Like our local magic club, our membership has risen by about 50% since the shop opened, from about 45 to 62, which is not a coincidence. It's because of the existence of that place. And I see loads of kids that come in and they're getting better at it. And I saw a kid come in last week and he had black painted nails and he never said anything or anything. But the mum of the kid, there was this amazing moment where she looked at me, looked at my nails, looked at her kids, and went, "Oh." No and way. I just think like that's so really lovely. Cute. Like he'd obviously asked her to paint his nails. This kid, I'm talking this like 8-9-year-old kid, and I'd be like, "Oh, mum, can you paint my nails?" And she's gone, "All right, sure." No, probably no idea why. And then kid comes into the shop and he sees me. I don't know. There's just so many amazing things about it. But it's just very, 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 very difficult. So support your local magic shops.
Bricks and mortar, man. They're a sort of dying thing, but I think, as you say, they're necessary. Like, I know certainly the likes of MAGICBOX is the sort of home ground for the Newcastle Magic Circle. Mm-hmm. We have community events there, which I know you guys do every second Sunday. So if you're ever in Edinburgh, check Wonder & Co socials on a Sunday. Every second Sunday they might have something on that you can go along to. Open to anyone of sort of magical interest.
Yeah, we open those up to literally anyone. I've had someone in the past couple of weeks who comes in who doesn't even want to learn magic. He just is interested in hearing people's stories about how they got into it, and he just sits and listens to people's stories, and it's great.
Yeah, I think bricks and mortar is where it started, and I think there still needs to be that support. And as wonderful it is to get all of the latest products really fast and blah blah blah. Like, support the little guys. It's what keeps this business going.
And the big guys are great because they're doing great things for Magic as well. And obviously they need sales to make those big things happen. But I always say like an £100 sale to one of them is par for the course. Yeah. When I get £100 through my website or in the store, it's like I'm like literally like inside fist bumping. I'm like, yes, today's been a good day. So these things make a difference.
Yeah, and again, like that makes a difference to you. But as you mentioned there with that child, the difference that you're making unknowingly to everybody else as well. Like, I spoke to Jeremy Griffiths about this a few episodes ago, in that you don't realize just how many people you influence, especially in the position that yourself and Graham Shaw at MAGICBOX are having on inspiring both the future generation and also still continuing the older generation is monumental.
Yeah, totally. Oh, like if I find out in like 10 years' time that like a young magician came up to me and was like, "Oh, I started doing magic because I came into your shop," I'd just be like, that'd like make it all worthwhile. But yeah, it's not easy. It's a bit of it's a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of expense and energy and care and time and love for me to personally not get anything out of it. But yeah, it's an adventure nonetheless.
Yeah. What lessons would you say you've learned from the business side of magic that you've then taken into what you're doing with the likes of Insane that have helped, that you think may help other people if you bring them to light?
Learn from the shop, or just
Yeah, just like from the shop and from business in general, that has then sort of branched off into the other things that you've been doing too.
yeah. I think I've always had a decent business mind, which I've applied to the shop and insane, and insane as well. The shop, yeah, it's tough because they are very different businesses. Um, People love packet tricks. Tell you that for free. Did not realize that until I opened a shop. People love packet tricks. And I
Yeah.
actually love them now too, to be fair. No, I think just being aware of what people want. And I think this is not even the magic side of the shop, it's the events side of the shop. I can tell when ticket sales are going badly for an event that we're running or a show that we're running. It's usually because the offering isn't right, or the way we've described it isn't right, or the way we've branded or marketed it isn't right. And then, so that's the first thing I go in and tweak and change. And when you get that right, it's really easy to sell tickets to things once you give people what they want.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're really good at with Insane as well. And a lot of our commercial success, I think, is down to our self-awareness, I think, on that. So I think being self-aware is really important in business.
Would you say self-aware to the extent of sort of being critically self-aware? Because I think a lot of people claim they're self-aware, but aren't necessarily aware of how they actually are. They're just aware of how they think they are.
I think so. And I think, well, the other thing is, and I'm about to basically recite our Blackpool lecture word for word here, but like we Insane, within our company, we have a couple of little mantras that we always repeat. And one of them is kill your darlings, which is that you've got to be willing to admit that you're basically completely wrong and just completely kill an idea that you've got. When you extrapolate that, that's what it is. It's be aware, be willing to admit that you're just completely wrong with something and you've got it wrong. And we're pretty good at that. And then the other thing that we have is we have a complete open feedback policy. So we all feel really comfortable giving each other as much feedback as we want to. We never ask each other for consent to give feedback. It's always unsolicited with each other within our company, and we're brutal with each other. Like if we think something's terrible, you'll know. And I think that's really important as well, because when your own self-awareness fails, which it does, everyone's does, but when your own self-awareness fails, it's important to have people around you that tell you, hey, buddy, that is not great.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that combination is really powerful in business, performance, whatever it might be, is real self-awareness and people around you that are willing to take over when you reach your own cap of self-awareness.
That perfectly segues us onto the next section, which is discussing that of Insane. We're going to move into our new segment, which is obviously the Annotated ERDNASE segment, which is normally where we take a look at a performance of yourself or of a guest, and we sort of annotate the ideas and concepts behind what you chose. What we're going to do is we're going to take a quick look at your 2024 Edinburgh Fringe trailer for Insane, and then we'll go through a few little questions on sort of how Insane came about, the different sort of styles that you guys have and the things that you bring to it, and where those ideas came from and why you specifically put those ideas together. So we're going to hop over to our different frame here, as to which we have a lovely, beautiful still of you pouting.
Is it here?
It's on your other side. There we go. Perfect. We'll give this a quick watch, and then we'll sort of delve into exactly what this show is.
It's a well-edited video, that.
It is incredible. That music as well. obviously helping you guys last year a little bit on the show. I've heard that song so many times; it's like ingrained in my head.
Yeah,
But it's
the
incredibly
royalty-free
catchy.
number.
Yeah, it's super, super good. So obviously, Insane Magic is yourself, Luke Osland, and Elliot Bibby. How did this show, one, come about in the first place, and how is it turned into what it is today?
So in Edinburgh Fringe 2022, I just moved back to Edinburgh. Didn't know Luke that well because he'd moved to Edinburgh while I was away, but Luke and Elliot had become quite close while I was away. Me and Elliot have been like best mates going back 10 or so years now. And so I ended up spending a lot of time with the two of them during the Fringe that year in 2022. And we went to see, let's call it an ensemble magic show that we didn't, let's say that we left it feeling inspired, but not for the right reasons. And we basically came out of it and thought to ourselves, well, that's actually the concept's there, like it's a cool idea. And it was Luke's idea. He was like, well, why don't we do a show together, the three of us? So the three of us decided that we were going to do that. We created a group chat and we basically just started pitching for a venue at the Fringe. Basically calling in all the contacts that we had between the three of us. And, between me, Elliot, and Luke, before that, we probably had about 25 combined years experience at the Edinburgh Fringe. Most of that coming from myself and Elliot, but Luke had been there a couple of years by then as well. So we had some kind of people that we knew and we were pitching the show. And yeah, Gilded Balloon gave us a venue. We got our venue in April. We did our first ever show on the 1st of April, 2022, which is hilarious because when we put tickets up on sale, all of our friends and family thought we were joking. We were just like donating money. We're like, no, there is a show, we promise. And yeah, we did a couple of previews. We did a little mini kind of Scotland tour between April and August. And then we did our first show in August 2023, sorry. And yeah, and then it's just kicked off since then. It's just exploded.
You guys have done, obviously, Edinburgh Fringe, and then earlier this year you guys took it over to Adelaide. How does it differ between the two? Is it similar in the sense that, obviously, Fringe festivals can't be super different, surely? Or is it, like, totally different?
Well, the Fringe festivals, it was our first time at the Adelaide Fringe as performers in that respect. Luke did a little solo show last year and I went to visit while I was on the ship. So we'd seen it before, but it was the first time we'd been given like a real venue at the Fringe in Adelaide. It's very different. It's similar in structure, I guess, but just in like at work, the mechanics of the Adelaide Fringe are very different to Edinburgh. The people are very different and their habits and the way they like to be engaged is very different. So that's very difficult when it comes to selling tickets because the formula that we kind of have for Edinburgh, which we know works and we sort of discovered, it doesn't work the same in Adelaide. And so we learned that and we adapted it accordingly. Obviously in Adelaide, the show differed. Elliot became 8 years younger, lost 2 kids and a fiance and changed his name to Tom Bolton.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a really different experience taking it to Adelaide, but it's all part of the fun, It's why we created the show and it's going where we want it to go.
Obviously, you mentioned there that there's obviously the three of you, and you all have very distinct performance styles and very distinct roles in the show. How do you keep everyone's style feeling different, but still having a sort of cohesive show that flows naturally without it feeling disjolted and it feeling like 3 separate performances?
So the first thing is that our first show that we ever did together, as in like Edinburgh Fringe 2023, was more disjointed than the show is now. It was still, one of the comments we got after that Fringe was they were expecting it to just be the three of us doing 3 15-minute sets or whatever. And it wasn't that. It was very much a 3-person show. And these days it's very much a 3-person show. In fact, I'd say most routines include at least 2, if not 3 of us in the show now. The first thing is that when we started it, the 3 of us had our own little niches anyway. So Luke was into sort of the stunty type magic. I was into mentalism and Elliot was into sort of just classic comedy magic. So that immediately is a box ticked because we now don't have to find our niches. We now have our 3 characters within the show. And then once you have those three characters that don't really clash, the other thing that works in our favor is that we are actually best mates. Like, we do genuinely spend a lot of time together, and we talk. Our group chat is popping off all day, every day about business stuff, but also just fun stuff. And we do a lot of things together. We hang out. We like each other, and I think that comes across on stage, that we do like each other, that we are having fun, and that it is three best friends doing a show together, and we've not just called each other up and made a business decision to do it together. So a lot of our cohesiveness just comes from that, the fact that we have chemistry and that we like each other and we're having fun with each other. And yeah, obviously there's struggles. You've got to write routines that includes each of our skill sets and combine them effectively, which is tough at times, but that's, again, part of the fun.
One of the sort of main differences between general performance and fringe performance is that obviously a lot of people like yourselves are almost writing a new show every single year. How does it differ writing your own show in comparison to writing a 3-person show year in, year out? Because I can imagine you burn through a lot of material when you're working as a trio, and there's not as much group magic as there is solo stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we've made a decision this year that when you look at all the best shows in the world, they actually, they don't change their material every year. Excuse me. So this year, for the first time, we've got some new stuff in the show, but we're bringing the best of our existing past shows back and just making it a bit bigger, a bit better. And actually, we've ended up adding more new stuff than we thought we would. But writing it with the three of us is difficult because we all have different opinions. We all have very different styles. And for a long part of the last year anyway, all three of us were in different places around the world. There was a point before the last Edinburgh Fringe where I was in Australia, Elliot was in Edinburgh, and Luke was in Las Vegas. And we were trying to write this show a couple of weeks before the Fringe, like polish it up from like the furthest time zones you could possibly get, which is crazy. But we have a process now that we work with that works really well for us. It uses a Google Doc, and we just throw everything in it, and then everyone can edit it and see what the edits are. And we use the comments on the side to add stuff or suggest stuff or this, that, and the other. And then we do like a group Zoom call every couple of weeks and refine stuff and give people jobs to do. And so it's tough, but it's also like it's really fun, and it's nice to have people to bounce the ideas off, right? And again, it's nice to have people to tell you that your ideas are good or bad.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I can imagine there's likely a lot of sort of creative differences, obviously coming from 3 completely different niches of magic. How do you go about trying to like please everyone and coming with this sort of coherent package that works for everyone?
I mean, when it comes to methods, we know when we found the best method, right? If a method's good, we'll run with it. If it's not, there's 3 of us and 3 completely different banks of knowledge who can throw methods into it, which is great. When it comes to like writing and style, it can be tough. Like we've had I wouldn't say arguments necessarily over that, but we've had like moments where we have to be pretty stern with each other and be like, look, mate, I know that you think this is good, but it's not. And we're good at finding compromise, I think. Usually I'm right.
Yeah, while Luke and Elliot aren't here to discuss otherwise.
To defend themselves. I think they would agree. No, they probably definitely won't. But no, I think we're pretty good at we can understand how each other work and think now as well. And we make allowances for each other's ways of thinking and space for that as well. But we've never had to battle out massively over a difference like that. But yeah, maybe one day.
I feel like having, as you mentioned there, obviously 3 banks of knowledge and 3 different opinions, you're almost more likely to get to the best solution because you're having 3 totally different inputs with 3 totally different methods and 3 totally different outlooks.
Totally. I mean, a great example is if you go and buy the download, which of the
nice little plug there.
Yeah, but the meal deal prediction, which is also in our book, The Secrets of Insane Magic, which has just been bought by Murphy's. There you go. Available very soon at your favorite magic dealer. But the method for that's in there. But that routine ran through our show last year, and that's a great example because Luke came up with the first part of the method for that quite early in the creative process of that routine. But he couldn't work out how to move that bit of the method on, like how to make it work, like how to get into it, if that makes sense, without going into details. And I immediately had a great idea from the world of mentalism to use a principle that, to be quite honest, I don't think either of them even really knew how it worked. I think if you asked them to describe that principle, they probably still wouldn't exactly know the details of it. But they don't need to, because I was the one doing that part of it. But that was a really great, and then Elliot had a lot of input in the routining of that and how to make it really funny and fun and interesting. So that's a great example of a routine where all three of our specific skills came together to make that the whole package.
Perfect. I mean, yeah, the success is evident. I mean, you guys might have your difference in opinions. There might be some conflict, but to have sold out 300-seater venues day in, day out at one of the biggest sort of companies, Gilded Balloon, at the Fringe, just goes to show, like, you're doing something right. And then things like Adelaide and Glastonbury, it's it should be, I assume, sort of nice and gratifying to show that the hard work and effort that you guys are putting in as a trio is certainly coming to fruition.
Yeah, definitely. I think I think we're onto something, and I think we're doing the things the right way, and we're working, like, you wouldn't believe how hard we work on those shows in that company as well. Because also, it's not just doing the shows. We've got a whole business to think about, and money to make and spend and move, and people to pay, and contracts to sign, and this, that, the other. So we're working really hard.
Which sort of segues perfectly into, obviously, this year you not only have the Insane Magic Show, you also have 1 Hour of Insanity, which is your circus and magic spin-off that you guys have brought out under Insane Productions. So what was the thinking behind that, and how has it come about, and what are people looking forward to for Edinburgh this year?
I think we've always wanted to expand. So when we came up with Insane, the first year we did it was just a bit of fun with the three of us, but it was so successful that we're like, right, we're onto something. We can't just we can't leave it. We eventually, our plan for Insane is kind of still to sort of franchise it a little bit. Like, we love the idea that it can be a bit like the Illusionists, where people can come in and come out. And, Tom coming to Adelaide with us was maybe the first proof of concept that can happen, that people can be swapped in and out. And so we also, me and Luke, when we spent a lot of time on the ship together during Purple Rabbit, used to joke about all the different shows under the title of 1 hour of insane something could be. Yeah. So we thought, like, 1 hour of insane comedy. We used to have a joke about 1 hour of insane stomping, which is just people like doing tap dancing and stomping for an hour. Yeah. So we've got all these funny jokes. And then the one that stuck was 1 hour of insanity, which is a kind of crazy circus variety comedy magic show that's family friendly. And so we approached Gilded Balloon this year with a couple of ideas for shows. One of them was 1 hour of insane comedy. They have an amazing comedy program themselves, so they didn't want us stepping on their toes there, which I totally understand. And so they gave us a venue for Insanity. And yeah, we just have this idea of like a compilation show that doesn't feel like a compilation show. Like, it feels like a cohesive cast. And yeah, so we worked hard to find some really great acts for it, and we've got a hula hooper, kind of street performer, juggler, a magician. So Tom is staying with Insane as the magician there, and then a host. We've got the incredible Australian comedian Josh Glance hosting the show, which is going to be crazy. So it's just going to be a crazy family-friendly mix of everything done quite extremely is our vision.
Yeah. Incredible. We're going to move into one quick final segment before we then segue into your plans for the future, and we'll come back to obviously Edinburgh Fringe and all of the other crazy stuff that you've got lined up. But the second segment that we've introduced recently is the question deck segment, in that I have a deck of cards. Each one has a different question on it, which is completely random. This sort of goes from general magic questions to potentially prolific life questions. So you could end up with absolutely anything. And to clarify, there's no breaks or anything like that, no shortcuts. So you just call out stop, and we'll find out which random question you're answering today.
Stop. I thought you were going to do the gag there.
No, this is your question.
I thought you were going to keep going.
So, have you ever had an experience that changed your perspective on magic?
Oh, have I ever had an experience that changed my perspective on magic? Yeah, I mean, I guess I think, unfortunately, the negative experiences for me change my perspective more than the positives do. I learn. I think I personally, and I don't know if this is a bad thing, but I learn personally more from things that are bad and seeing what not to do than necessarily what to do, because I like to try and find what to do myself if I possibly can.
Yeah.
And so I guess one of the benefits on both sides of that coin of being from Edinburgh and living here is that I get to see a lot of magic shows, or a lot of shows, I guess, at the Fringe.
Yeah.
And so I see a lot of really good magic, and I see a lot of really bad magic, unfortunately. And yeah, I probably won't pinpoint the exact experience because it is a negative thing and it is a magician. Yeah. But I can think of two specific shows that I've seen. One of them was the Catalyst for Insane, and another one, which otherwise should have been quite a good show, was a complete car crash. And I think those completely changed the way that I see my job as a magician and how to go about it. And I guess the respect that you should pay your audience. And the basics of that is to work hard and make a good show. But yeah, I guess the general answer would be the Fringe for sure. More specifically, yeah, a couple of shows I can think of that have made me think about my responsibility to my audience to do my best.
Yeah, again, it sort of comes back to taking even the things that you dislike and shaping them and making them something that you can like and can perform, much like the magic draw stuff that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, exactly. As I say, like you learn as much from shows that are bad of what not to do as you can from shows that are great, and you learn what to do. Definitely, like you're learning every time you see something.
And doing something. I can imagine, especially in the Fringe, for example, you've got a full month of shows to work a show in, and I can imagine shows change quite a lot as they go through.
Totally, yeah. With the first week especially, after the first week they're usually quite locked in, but for the first week you've got sort of 5-6 attempts at a show where you can change stuff and whole routines get put in and taken out. And we tell the story of our late night adult show last year at the Edinburgh Fringe a lot because we're really open about it. And when we first opened that show, it was horrible, it was terrible. The first 2 shows we did of that were, amongst myself, Elliot, and Lily Call agree, the worst shows we've ever done together and individually. It was horrible, and we just scrapped that entire show after day 2 and rewrote it from the ground up. We completely wrote a new show in 2 days, got all the props together, rehearsed it, and performed it, and it was way better after that. But yeah, as you say, like you got to learn from, like we had to make that mistake to learn from it, right?
Yeah. Again, goes back to kill your darlings.
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, I think in our book, which is available at all good magic dealers, in the Kill Your Darlings segment, we actually talk about that show, and specifically there was one routine where the winner would be left with a prediction on the plaque of a kind of penis trophy, which is like a stag hen do reward. And we only did that. We bought 30 of them for the month, and we only did the routine twice. So Elliot Bibby is now the proud owner of 28 penis trophies that are sitting in his garage with no home because we just killed that routine, and there's just no way to salvage it. It just didn't work the way we had hoped it would.
Well, maybe we should start handing those out to the egos in the magic community.
Oh, can you imagine though? Oh my goodness. We need more than 28, I think.
Okay, let's...
I think of 1 or 2 people that are deserving of 28 each.
Okay, maybe let's segue this into lasting thoughts rather than potentially driving down a very controversial road there. Obviously, we've mentioned a multitude of things. Insane are off to Glastonbury, and rather gracefully, you guys invited myself and Tom along, and we're incredibly excited to both
Yeah.
help and experience that. So that's coming up. What else is in the plans for the future for both yourself and for Insane as a whole?
Yes, we have Glastonbury obviously coming up this week, and then we move on to the next thing is the Fringe, really, the Durham Fringe. A couple of us are coming down there to do a bit of work there. Then we've got Insane Magic at the Fringe. We have 1 Hour of Insanity, which we are writing, directing, and producing. So I've got lots of work to do for that. I'm doing a solo late night adults only hypnosis show at the Fringe as well, which, to be totally honest, is just for a bit of fun. It's not going to be the most artistically great show because it's a late night adults only hypnosis show, but it will be fun. So that's the Fringe, and then after the Fringe, personally, I've got IBM. I do the close-up competition organizer for them, so I'll be going to the IBM convention. But yeah, if you want to enter the close-up competition, there's still a couple of spaces. Get on that. IBM's great, and yeah, we've got a little mini Insane tour planned for the back end of this year that will hopefully get bigger. And yeah, I'm hoping to get some more cruise ship work as well. I've got a new cruise ship agent quite recently, so they're paddling away in the background, trying to get me some work for after the Fringe and beyond. But we'll see how that goes.
Incredible, plenty of stuff in the works, and obviously Luke has his own solo show as well. Obviously part of Insane.
Luke's doing that under the Insane Productions banner, and yeah, we're like helping him with that as little as we possibly can.
Excellent. Where can our listeners find you, Cammy? Where can we keep up to date with all the incredible stuff that you're doing? Insane, the general stuff, and your own adventures.
Yeah, I mean, I have like 10 Instagram pages you can follow. You can follow me, Cameron Gibson IRL on Instagram, Wonder & Co on Instagram, Wonder Co UK, Insane Magic Show on Instagram, Insane Productions on Instagram. That's got all of our shows. It isn't just Insane Magic. My website, my YouTube channel, which you saw in the little clip halfway through. My TikTok, my OnlyFans. I'm everywhere.
Perfect. Well, we'll have it all linked in the show notes below, so definitely go check out Cammy. As we mentioned there, if you're at Glastonbury, hopefully you saw Insane, because this is going to come out afterwards, but you should have come to see it. If not, obviously get yourself along to both Durham Fringe, Edinburgh Fringe, and anything that these guys are doing in the future. It's a lot of fun, and I'm sure you guys will enjoy it. It's been absolutely incredible spending over an hour and a half with you talking here, and I realised, as you mentioned at the start, we often spend a lot of time not seeing each other, and now it's going to be 3 months of almost not seeing each other.
Yeah, a couple of weeks where I don't see you.
Yeah, so I appreciate you taking the time to sit and look at my face for a little bit and get to talk about magic, because I mean, more often than not, even when we are together and obviously we're doing shows and things like that, we don't really get to sit down and just discuss like methods and inspirations and all of the fun things that come on the magic side of things, because it's obviously very intense in the Fringe in terms of show production and all of that stuff, and heavily drinking and parties and all of that.
I guess like we usually rock up together at the point where those conversations have happened, and we're in the thick of it. You're right. So yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, it's been a nice change. Obviously, hopefully you guys have enjoyed it as well. If you have, please do leave a 5-star review. Remember to check out all of the stuff that Cammy's doing, and we shall see you guys on the next one. Goodbye.